Welcome to the Rosenfeld Review. Lou Rosenfeld here, and I am so happy to welcome my guest today, Llewyn Paine. Dr. Llewyn Paine. I got to introduce you the right way because you worked very hard for that degree in cognitive psychology, right?
I did.
You did, and so everything after that is sort of, it's easy. You're going downhill because you're working on, you worked at Microsoft and Disney and HoloLens, and you're also, well, now that you're an independent, it's getting easier and easier, and you're always, and you're working with me, which has got to be, totally downhill. But we are working together, Llewyn and I, on, Llewyn is a curator of the second edition of the Designing with AI conference coming up June 10th and 11th. It is virtual. And Llewyn spoke at the first one, and she was so fantastic that we decided to bring her in to organize the second one. Llewyn, welcome to the Rosenfeld Review.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Llewyn, so we'll talk about the conference a little later, but I'm really wanting to dig into your journey as a UX researcher. You come out of CogSci. You worked in some pretty big places, but almost always with emerging technology at that intersection of emerging tech and user research. That's a journey that maybe for you it's been happening a little longer than a lot of people who may be listening to this podcast, but you may not be that far ahead of them. There may be some very fresh experiences that would be very instructive to our listeners about what it's like to, as a UX researcher, start working with this crazy new technology. Well, let's start at the beginning with emerging tech and maybe what were some of your assumptions and how did you think it would impact your work as a UX researcher?
That was really interesting going from an academic background into working in industry. And this was right around 2010. So 3D television was the big new thing. So my first industry job was at the Disney Media and Advertising Lab in Austin, Texas. It was two emerging technologies in one because it was the 3D tech and it was also neuromarketing. That was a really big trend around then. Using
neuromarketing,
sensors.
What's that?
That's right. So you're basically hooking people up to sensors to understand their experience of media and interfaces. And it was this big, popular thing for this short window of time. And then it kind of disappeared. There's still a few people who do it, but it's kind of fallen by the wayside now. Didn't really deliver on the promise of completely upending user research.
So you were doing that at Disney.
That's right.
And what was your thinking about what kind of, how it was going to impact your work? Did you feel like it was, obvious we're going to start working with these kinds of technologies, of course, or were you a little bit more tenuous or uneasy at the get-go?
It was an interesting entry into the field because it wasn't really UX proper back then. Media is not exactly user experience and neuromarketing is not exactly user research. But with both of them, it was right on the cusp of this new tech, this kind of hype cycle, which aligns kind of really well to where we are with AI right now. And there was a lot of promise about 3D television is going to be the next big thing. Neuromarketing is going to be the next big thing. But there was a lot of skepticism that I had as a researcher actually looking at the data that we were getting back in terms of, is this really resonating with people? And it doesn't really have the value that that the marketers are saying it's going to have.
Did you also have some skepticism over the quality of the data itself?
Oof, that might be a question that I have to back away from.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I'd like to have at least one question a podcast that forces that to happen. But I'm just sort of wondering about like, first of all, listen, I mean, there's a lot of chauvinism in every field, including the various research fields. There's a lot of people in user research that have their doubts about things coming out of marketing or market research, and vice versa. Um, but it sounds like I don't know, when you first conjured up neuromarketing a couple of minutes ago, I'd never heard of it, and it just made me very uncomfortable. It just sounds
Yeah.
like something like I don't want to have done to me as a subject.
It was a weird thing. It's a weird thing as a participant because you're going into a lab, you're being hooked up to sensors, maybe on your face. Um, and it was, I think the places where I was working were trying to approach it in an ethical and responsible manner. But the interesting thing about working in that space is for years afterwards, the other places I work would be contacted by vendors selling these tools, and often overselling what they're really capable of.
Hmm.
These were tools that were really designed for media research. They're supposed to detect emotional responses to very emotional types of stimuli. And yet, maybe there wasn't enough of a market there. They were coming to uh, traditional software companies where you have these interfaces that aren't going to be evoking that strong kind of emotion. And it really wasn't appropriate to use these measures. Um, but they were being kind of pitched as the next big thing that all of user research should be, that it would basically be revolutionizing the field.
Well, you're making me think of eye tracking, and I remember we had a book on eye tracking, a very good book, and not a rah rah isn't the best thing since sliced bread book by Aga Boyko, but I remember Jared Spool's take on eye tracking, and I think he was, and a lot of people react to the overselling, to the marketing of the technology. And so it sounds like maybe you started sensing that the technology was, maybe itself had its uses, but was being overbilled, oversold, overmarketed. Did that skepticism then travel with you into the next role?
Yeah, it certainly did. And it's interesting. It stayed with me. I feel like there's some really interesting ties to AI that I am sure that we will get into. But what was so great about having that background with my particular colleagues was I was working with a lot of PhD media researchers who had actually invented a lot of the
Hmm.
measures that we were using, and it really showed me the great importance of working with people who really understand the science when you're introducing new research methods. Because we don't often have this experience where we're bringing something completely new methodologically into the research field. We're usually using interviewing and surveying techniques that have been around for decades and very well studied. But with something like eye tracking or galvanic skin response, there's only a few people who really have the scientific background to really understand what's going on there.
Well, okay, so these technologies get progressively more powerful, but some of the ones we've been talking about seem like they're more about data collection, and whether it's eye tracking or what's it, neuromarketing, and my understanding as a non UX researcher about how AI is really being looked at is as more of a tool for analysis.
Yeah.
And does does that mean we have to, as researchers, look at it very differently and with it maybe a different kind of a different jaundiced eye, the left jaundiced eye, and not the right one? I don't know, but I mean, does that mean that some of these tools actually are more universally useful than some of the data gathering tools that we've talked about earlier?
Yeah, I feel like AI is just, I think my position, partly as a result of curating this talk and hearing all the perspectives I've heard, this conference, and hearing all these responses, it's left me with this kind of profound ambivalence when it comes to AI. I specifically focus on AI's applications in research because that's what I do. But I've seen from designers, a lot of my designer colleagues, kind of the same ambivalence where there are a lot of things that it allows us to do really well, but it's also oversold. And
Hmm.
I don't know that enough of us have had the time really to understand the science behind all of these new developments. So when we're trying to apply AI to research synthesis, there are so many variables that can impact how well that works. And with the new models constantly coming out and everybody doing their own prompts, all these different ways of bringing data into the model for synthesis or into the prompt for synthesis, uh, there's just a lot that is a lot of underlying scientific knowledge that isn't fully distributed, is how I'd say it.
So if it's not or evenly distributed, I guess that's the old Bruce Sterling quote. Where is it now, and where should we be looking? Where is that knowledge?
It may be a little bit of a misnomer too for me to say unevenly distributed because um, so much of AI is emergent. So much of
Hmm.
AI capabilities are emergent. And so we're not programming AI to behave in certain ways. It's non-deterministic.
Hmm.
Uh, so a lot of it really comes through, I wouldn't say trial and error, but really true experimentation, trying
Hmm.
these things out at scale, um, running statistical analysis, not just running it a uh, one or two times, but really running it multiple times.
So people who are UX researchers in large organizations with huge troves of data and a lot of developers who know R and whatnot are probably well positioned to do this. If you're working at Google, let's say, um, is that realistic for most people who are doing research? Can they? I'm not saying it's not, but I'm wondering how they can, in a very practical sense, do that experimentation. Maybe AI makes it really easy to do that. What do you think?
Well, that is a really interesting segue into talking about the workshop we did from Advancing Research. So, I ran an AI and user research workshop after, I guess, just a couple of weeks ago.
Hmm.
And one of the things we did was we had a room full of 30 people who were skilled researchers, but who maybe didn't have a ton of background in AI. And we went through the exercise of everybody entering the exact same prompt to synthesize the same data set. And we looked at the huge variability of responses there that they got back from the same model, the same prompt, the same data. And I think that was really eye-opening to everyone in the room. But also, you can just run that prompt 30 times yourself. It's not
Hmm.
something uh, that you have to be a skilled that you have to have a huge amount of resources to do. It's more about just taking a controlled, experimental approach.
It is so sort of. Earlier, we were sort of playing it forward to the present. If you were going to go back in time, are there any good analogies of how researchers got their feet wet with another technology or research method
Hmm,
that's sort of a useful way to understand what they should be doing now, like what you were covering in your workshop?
that's an interesting question. I'm not sure I have a one-to-one comparison, but what it brings me back to is being in grad school as a psychologist and developing any sort of new method. You don't try, if you have a new idea for a research approach or you don't test it the one time.
Hmm.
And if you get a result back that looks good from one person, you go forward and say, "Yeah, I know what I'm doing. This is something that works." If you're creating a new method or running a new kind of analysis, you do it multiple times. You statistically test it. You vary your inputs and your outputs until you are consistently getting predictable results. And I think we should be doing the same thing with AI, but we're just not used to that because we're used to computers being deterministic. And it requires a different way of engaging when they're producing such a huge variable set of potential output.
So I'm going to try to sound smart here. I may make a big mistake, but is it basically like we have to open our hearts to Bayesian analysis?
Oh, I never was much good at Bayesian statistics, but I think statistics broadly, just treating our prompts as variables
Mm-hmm.
and figuring out what is our dependent variable, how do we measure that, how many times you have to run that until you can feel like you really have confidence that this is doing what you think it's doing.
Well, let me ask you this. In that environment, it sounds like there's a lot of variables. What are the things that are consistent? Is it the models themselves? Is it something else? What is stable?
So little is stable unless you choose to keep it stable. But you
Mm-hmm.
you have that choice. As one of the things that I recommended in the workshop is that if you're a researcher and want to really do this in a serious way, whatever that means, um, then maybe you should be engaging directly with the models themselves and not using a tool that's built on top of the model, because
Mm-hmm.
then you can know exactly which model it is, which version of the model it is. Um, and you asked about the things that that you can hold consistent. Um, how you're approaching the prompt, starting with a fresh instance of the conversation every time, so it's not coming with prior context.
Mm-hmm.
And then, documenting everything, I think, is one of our real strengths as researchers, so that we
So
can keep that consistency.
yeah, I mean, in a way, like the process you just described is in itself a way to make things consistent, right? It's like the researcher's role and control over the process, if it's handled consciously, is something that stabilizes the research environment, I would imagine.
Yeah, and we're so fortunate as researchers to have that skill.
We take a lot of things for granted, don't we? We Before we take a break, I'm interested to know if there's a lot of research, a lot of UX researchers are probably thinking like, all right, this makes sense. What do I do next? And besides going to the conference, which we'll talk about in a moment, and taking your workshop, which we're going to be repeating as well, um, is there a book, a community, something that it's really, really a helpful way for researchers to get their feet wet here?
I found a paper very helpful as I was kind of starting to look at the errors that people make while prompting. It's called Why Johnny Can't Prompt. And it looks at the kind of errors that people tend to make. And they really call out this issue of people doing one or two prompts and thinking, okay, I got a good result. My prompt was probably perfect then. So that's a really nice introduction.
That's great. And of course, I'm a reformed librarian from the 1980s. That's when I got my library science degree. And I'll just say that I'm going to put in a plug for reference librarianship as a way to understand people and their questions and their
Mhm.
prompts. It's really the same thing. I found it really, really useful in my career, and I think it's going to have a bit of a rebirth in this age of understanding what prompts are really for and how they can change and iterate and so forth. But it's not about me and my background. We're going to get back to you and talking about your role in this conference that I'm so excited we're putting on very soon. First, we're going to take a break. You're listening to the Rosenfeld Review. Be right back. I'm going to give you 5 reasons you should be using the Rosenverse. First one, where else are you going to find 100 events that you can attend for free every year, 2 a week, about product management, product design, and UX design, plus a highly engaged Slack-based community of over 13,000 of your peers. What else are you going to find in the Rosenverse? You'll find hundreds and hundreds of recordings of conference presentations and community session recordings, all in one place from a single search browser interface. And behind those hundreds of recordings are hundreds of experts, people who have advanced the field, people who are your peers who are doing interesting new things, all in one place. Why else should you use the Rosenverse? We've been advancing the field of UX since 2005. You're going to find the most advanced content on such topics as design operations and program management, UX research, and a host of other topics from climate UX to civic design to how designers can work better in product organizations. Lastly, you've been trusting our content since we started back in 2005. Whether it's our books, our conferences, our community sessions, well, we think you're going to trust the way we've brought those all together so that you can spend less time searching and browsing and more time learning and benefiting. I hope you'll try out the Rosenverse, and I hope you'll consider upgrading to a gold paid membership because it brings you a lot more. Not only do you have access to hundreds and hundreds of recorded conference presentations, but you also get access to the Rosenbot, which is a ChatGPT 4 level chatbot that we've been training on all of our content, including our growing collection of nearly 60 books and counting. It's all there, it's all great content, and the Rosenbot is a cutting-edge way to get at it. You can try the gold membership out with a trial for 2 weeks. Give it a try. Hope you like it. Welcome back to the Rosenfeld Review. Lou Rosenfeld talking with Llewyn Paine. Oh, wow, we got into a lot about the intersection of AI and UX research. Now we're going to take it to talking about the conference, Designing with AI, that you are the curator of, coming up June 10th and 11th. And you spoke at it last year. You can be doing a workshop on research and AI as part of the conference. Really looking forward to having you repeat that workshop. Tell us about putting this conference together. What's been involved and how's it looking? What can we expect if we attend?
So it's been really interesting seeing the conference come together because I think we started talking about this in July of last year. And I remember it was so hard trying to get ahead of where AI would be by June of 2025. And I think we still have some surprises in store for the remaining upcoming months. But I think we made a good choice in how we framed our call for proposals, which was kind of a where are we today? Where do we want to go tomorrow? And from that, we got a bunch of great speakers who are kind of in the today bucket, really thinking critically about AI and what do we need to do to implement it effectively and safely in our organizations right now. And we also still have this wonderful tomorrow component of people who are really thinking inspirationally and creatively about where we can apply AI in ways that we might not even be thinking about yet. And so it's this wonderful blend of practicality and optimism, and I'm so excited about it.
Well, that's one of the things that we tried to do last year, and I'm glad we're carrying over this year, which is, yes, that practical aspect, but also helping people build the muscles of critical thinking when it comes to this stuff, which Lord knows we need it. And it's funny. I forgot that we started so long ago, July of 2024, for an event taking place in June of 2025, which is actually pretty natural or normal for how we do our conferences. But with this topic, I mean, the proposals came in through the call for proposals, like about 4 or 5 months ago now? That's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and and a lot has happened in
Exactly.
AI since then. Yeah,
But
DeepSeek wasn't a thing.
right. But I mean, so should we just burn down the program and just start over 2 weeks before June 11th and 10th and just obviously the answer is no. But I think we've been able to kind of blunt the kind of concerns that the content would be dated.
I agree. Yeah, we've got, I think the critical thinking talks are, and I should say, every one of these talks is both representing critical thinking and incredible creativity. But our day one talks that are really focusing on where we are right now, They bring up such great questions about the ethics of how we're working, how we bring our organizations on board with AI and overcome their concerns, and also how we do it in ways that are responsible and safe. And those are questions that are really going to be relevant regardless of what new developments come out. And I think the day two talks that are focused on creative applications of AI are still incredibly cutting edge. Nothing is dated. All of this is just very inspirational.
Yeah, and I'm going to nerd out on the structure because that's like the thing I really get into. It's an information architecture fetish, I know, but the 2 days, well, there's a lot of symmetry. We have an opening, featured opening speaker. That's Aveda Sampson, who's got huge experience doing this work inside large organizations and with teams and so forth. And just so much fun to hear her speak. We're closing it, second day, with Matt Webb, who is doing amazing stuff and comes out of Berg and interesting environments like that, where they really made things, and he continues to do that with AI. And then each day, the sort of the meat of each day are these case studies. We have 4 per day, 8 case studies total that Llewyn was just mentioning a bit about, and then a panel each day. So we didn't get into the panels. Tell us a little bit about the panels.
Yeah, so the panels are a great opportunity to kind of fill in some of the gaps in what has happened between the time when the call for proposals went out and when we're actually having the conference take place. So our day one panel is going to be a lot of folks looking at kind of from inside the AI space of what are the new developments that designers specifically need to be aware of, and what are the potential implications that they'll have for us. And then our second day, we have a really cool panel where we're kind of looking ahead at signals about where AI is going based on the perspectives of a technologist, a creative, and an ethicist. So 3 very different but very relevant lenses for design.
So a technologist, an ethicist, and a creative go into a bar, and I don't know. We'll have to have AI write the punchline, but I'm really excited to be working on this conference with you, Llewyn. It's been so much fun to see you taking not only your experience as a past speaker, but your UXR lens, and using that to help our speakers really develop their ideas, get their ideas out there. It's fun just being at the 2 meetings which we had with our speakers this week. They've been working on this for months, folks. So, and Llewyn's helping guide them the whole way. And it is, I think you put it really nicely at one point. It's like you're getting your own little mini conference yourself,
Yes.
right?
They have all they just put together their draft videos this week. So I got a preview of all of their talks. And it was already super exciting. I enjoyed every one of them.
And they're really starting to jam on each other's stuff, which I love seeing.
Pulling out their own themes.
Yep. They're rendering us practically irrelevant, which is great. They can run with it themselves, have their own narrative arc that they create for each day. That's wonderful. Llewyn, thank you for joining us today. Before we let you go, what did you bring for our listeners?
So I have been reading a lot of books on AI, as you can imagine. But one that I have been particularly finding valuable is called AI Snake Oil by Arvind Narayanan and Sayesh Kapoor. It's a wonderful critical take on AI, not just generative AI, but really looking at the problems that we're facing with adopting AI safely and the difficulty of getting trustworthy information about what AI can and can't do and what we can realistically do about that. So great book. Recommend it.
Great recommendation. Thanks for that. And thanks for joining us today on the Rosenfeld Review. Llewyn Paine, great to have you.
Thanks so much, Lou.
Thanks for listening to the Rosenfeld Review, brought to you by Rosenfeld Media. If you like our show, please subscribe and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. I'd love it if you tell a friend to have a listen, and check out our website for over 100 podcasts with other interesting people. You'll find them all at rosenfeldreview.com.